Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Men of War. Troy and Tyler here. Super excited. We're following up with last week's video. We're gonna kind of dive a little bit more into the swim buddy model, and Tyler, you just mentioned it's kind of been the theme for us for January, but we really wanted to start the year off with this of encouraging guys to go find your buddy and kind of help build some what to do, what not to do, kind of guidelines, if you will, around the relationship. Just again, Tyler and I have seen this so valuable to take this swim buddy model with he and I, and really building this relationship, building our friendship, and at this point it's evolved and it's just so natural, and we kind of follow the swim buddy model daily, and it's just because, again, like we continue to talk about, just that repetition, just doing it over and over and over again, even on the days when you feel like you don't want to. uh, you know there's days, Tyler, where you and I are like, the last thing we want to do is reach out to each other and like talk through our tough times or ask for prayer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these are real, our real life case examples, and I think it's been extremely beneficial. I very rarely have I had like a really strong support network just within my own primary, family. Of course, my wife now, but growing up and being able to open up. So it's new for me. Like we've kind of mentioned throughout the month of January, a bit of an uncomfortable situation, right? To just open up to somebody, whether you trust them 100% and you love them, you trust them. There's somebody in your life that you can go to. I think just interweaving this kind of the spiritual factor in this whole thing just really grounds it, so you're not getting off track. Taking this swim buddy structure and turning it into something different, because we've all had gym buddies, drinking buddies, go to your bar buddy kind of stuff, which is great. I mean, it's good to have those outlets and go to the gym and have those things, but I think just having this as its own branch, its own primary pillar of like your life, and having somebody you can go to, pray with. Hey man, haven't heard from you in a bit. How you feeling? Just having regular touch points, I just think is, again, just so important. And at least for me and Troy, it just helps us stay on track and in our prayer life and with our families and with God, more importantly. And not that you can't get that anywhere else, but this is just a great source, a great system to at least try and see if it works for you guys.
Yeah, that's great. You brought up a point of having the we were your typical drinking buddies, coming from law enforcement, coming from military background, and that was kind of a natural thing, right? It was just like, oh yeah, we'll go grab a beer after work, or and not saying there's anything wrong with that, but one thing I found is a lot of times that's the guy's problem that he's dealing with. That's a challenge that the guy's facing, is dependency on alcohol or dependency on drugs, or you know if he drinks, it leads into the next detrimental habit. And so that was kind of we kind of highlight this later on as a what not to do as a swim buddy friend. But I think you brought up a good point of it's got to be more than that, and you have to be aware of that if you do have that relationship, or just recognize that could be your buddy's struggle, and so don't keep taking him into that environment and tempting him with that.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
being real, being raw, and saying those things, because I think everybody, probably even everybody listening in right now too, like we've all had that person that maybe at the time you didn't recognize it, but or maybe you did, but maybe they've just been drinking a little bit too much, going to the bar a little bit too much, missing work, and when it starts to interfere with those things, that's when somebody needs to come in and have like a real conversation. If that person doesn't have, they might not have even that person in their life to step in and be like, dude, you've been missing work. Like, I know you've been having some family stuff. Like, we need to sit down and we need to find some help for you. We need to do something and step in before it gets spirals out of control to the point where now you're looking at somebody who's divorced, alcohol problems, family problems, doesn't see their kids, whatever it is. But I hope that, this system provides that first level of somebody interjecting and stepping in and be like, guys, like, what's happening with so and so? Like, I'm worried about him, and
Yeah.
being that I don't know, being that kind of like that rescue guy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole concept behind the swim buddy model is that you would know your buddy inside and out. You know him better than he knows himself almost, and you can pick up on those warning signs and you can intervene. One of the things we've continued to highlight is, you know, in law enforcement and military, we always have an emergency action plan, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit. But in the event something catastrophic has happened, what are our emergency action plans? And when I look at the swim buddy model and I look at just your example you just gave, Tyler, if something's going wrong in your buddy's life, you know, what can you do? And I put it as simple, basic EAP, and really these should be guidelines for your relationship. But EAP is encourage, accountability, and protection. And we believe that protection comes in the form of prayer. And so that would be one thing I want to challenge you guys with right up front is, one, if something's not going right, you encourage your buddy immediately. So you take that EAP. All right, we're in an emergency state. What can I do? I'm going to encourage him. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call him. I'm going to send him a text. And then you roll right into accountability. Oftentimes when guys are in that dark space, they don't want to be accountable. They want to be left alone. They want to isolate. They don't want to talk about their feelings. They don't want to talk about the challenge they're facing. So you almost have to come lock arms with that guy and make him be accountable. And if he doesn't respond to your text, then you go to the call. If he's just giving you short answers, you kind of have to pry it out of him, right?
Yeah.
You have to keep, walking beside him, letting him know you're there, and just saying, "Hey, man, we're gonna get through this," and hold him accountable.
Amen. That's right. It's too easy for us. It's too easy for us guys. It's too easy for us to sit in that dark hole of isolation and living in between these two ears here, and that can be a dangerous place. It can be a beautiful place, but it can be dangerous too. And when you start to see somebody like that, that encouragement, that prayer, that accountability, not necessarily in that order, but that's a huge part of it. Like, you got to reach out to these guys. Like, if not you, then who? And so you got to reach out to these folks. And you got to help them out, and it. Like, we've seen it. We know guys in our life. We know guys that aren't here today, and it's like, man, if I just would have reached out sooner or done something more for him, and I don't know. Now you're sitting there getting another text message, another phone call, and you're like, gosh, like, you start to question. You're like, did anybody really just walk beside that person and not just take them out to lunch or anything, but just like really address the root cause of these problems and talk through it and seek help together. Hey, I know counselor, I know somebody, but I don't know, just starting that foundational piece of prayer and encouragement, and at least it gets me thinking about it. Like, who was there for those guys in the beginning? I don't know. It's a harsh reality, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is. And Tyler, you and I have talked about it, but I had that exact scenario where I had two former teammates that uh, ended up taking their life a month after I talked to them. And we talked about everything under the sun. Talked about what the next career looked like, what transition out of the military looked like. Talked about our favorite sports teams, and I never asked that other question of like, how you doing mentally, or how you doing spiritually. And those two kind of shook me up, and I carried those for a long time and still do. But that was a big push to get this model out there and to add that we have the encouragement, we have the accountability piece, but that third piece is the prayer
Yeah.
and the protection over your buddy. Because I realized in that moment of getting those phone calls of like, hey, do you hear about so and so? Do you hear about so and so? I didn't offer that protection for them. I didn't offer them that prayer. And you and I know how powerful that is. And
Yeah.
when you're in that dark moment, when you're facing that challenge, or you feel like you're on an island by yourself,
Yeah.
that's the wake up call. Oftentimes, is that guy being willing to pray with his buddy. And so that's the EAP, the encourage, the accountability, the protection through prayer. That's what you have to pour over your buddy in
Yeah.
those dark times. When he's going through a challenge, when he's struggling, when he's just not feeling like himself, pour those three over him.
In this example for the prayer piece, it might be tough. That person might not want to hear any prayers or receive any, but I know for me, when I walked away from the church and my faith and everything for almost a decade, I didn't want any of that. But I know that all those years of prayers that were built up ultimately got me to where I am today. So whether you don't have to shove it down their throats every day, but I do know that's extremely helpful. It's extremely beneficial. It's the best line of defense. It's so powerful. People were praying for me, and in my darkest hours and the times where I just said, I don't believe in God. I don't want any of that. And everybody still continued to do so. So I know it's extremely helpful and powerful, despite what we think. So
Yeah, and that kind of bridges into the next topic of what should a swim buddy be? Daily, what does a swim buddy look like? And in First Thessalonians 5:11, it says, "Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing." And that's kind of to that point. Your buddy might say he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to hear the scripture. He might say, "Yeah, I don't want you to pray with me." But just know, like, you got to keep encouraging him. That's what you're here for. You as a swim buddy, you're there to be the encouragement. And
yeah,
you know, there's gonna be tough times where you're just like, you feel like you're bothering the guy by sending him too many scriptures, or praying too often. But just know, like, that's what it takes. You got to wrap your buddy up. You gotta you gotta speak the truth into him. You gotta continue to encourage him. So
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, we've been touching on this quite a bit over the last month. I feel like, hopefully folks have a pretty decent understanding. It's, not just the gym buddy or whatnot, but it's deeper roots, a deeper faith-based lens, and that emergency protection line, that prayer guy, your go-to guy. And I think we've really tried to harp on this the past month, but we haven't really talked too much about, like, what if somebody shouldn't be necessarily, but we did touch on it a little bit earlier, and so I think those are important factors too to keep in mind, that when you're finding that swim buddy, that you're directing it still in that faith-based perspective. That's just so important. I feel like.
one of the final comments I had on what a swim buddy should be, kind of going back to last week's video, is the extreme case is you're there to save your buddy's life, right? And again, coming from law enforcement and special forces background, that's kind of why we highlighted that, because
Yeah.
that's how important that model is. That's how important that swim buddy is. So when you're pouring into your buddy, when you're pouring scripture, when you're praying over him, just keep in mind how serious that relationship is. You're there. You never know. You never know what text, what call, what encouragement,
Yeah.
could ultimately save your buddy's life. They could pull him up out of the darkest moment of his life, and it could it could revive him. It could save his life. So don't think that any act, no matter how small or how big, like don't discredit what power that could be providing to your swim buddy. So just as you walk throughout your day to day life and you think, you know, what do I want to be as a swim buddy? Just be there. Just be there for your buddy. Encourage him, keep him
Yeah.
accountable, pray for him. Just be there for him.
I had to, if I had to boil it down in just a couple of sentences or just a few words, when we first started talking about this a few years ago now, if I had to boil it down to like 2 points, it's you keep it faith based and keep it real. And that's the way I looked at it from when we first started talking. You keep it faith based, you keep it real, and I feel like everything else kind of falls in place. Honestly, keep God at the center of all this.
Keep God at the center and keep it real.
Yep.
I love it.
Yes, sirree.
And that's what we do, right? We live that out daily. Just we keep it real with each other.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Doesn't have to be some deep theology. Just keep it real.
Yeah.
I like that.
Little simple, little simplistic, but maybe my Neanderthal brain just has to keep it simplistic, but keep it faith based, keep God at the center, and keep it real. Be open with each other, and these are the burdens I carry, and Galatians 6:2 we have here: carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Carry each other's burdens. Be open and real. I've reached out to you. And I'm like, hey, gosh, I'm struggling with these things. I need to pray more with my wife. I need to do this or that. But just being real about it. If you're not willing to talk about it, you know, gosh, you're not. If you can't talk about it, you're never going to work on it. So
You just brought up our next point of what a swim buddy shouldn't be. And you brought up we carry each other's burdens. Galatians 6:2.
yeah,
We can't view if your buddy comes to you with a problem, if he's facing a challenge, no matter what it is, you can't view him as a burden. You can't view that challenge as a burden. You have to take his burden and you have to carry it like it's your own. So what you don't want to do, we've kind of touched on already, is if you know your buddy has detrimental behavior, or he's living in he's living in some kind of unhealthy sin, some unrighteous act. First and foremost, you don't want to condone that. You don't want to continue to empower him to go through that detrimental behavior. Again, we're speaking truth. We're speaking real here. We're putting the spiritual component into this, guys. So you have to be upfront with your buddy. You can't downplay it, or you can't just pretend like it's not there. As a swim buddy, we're called to hold each other accountable. So
yeah,
address it. Let him come to you. Let him, confess what it is to you, and then help him turn from that. So
yeah.
don't empower him to continue to live that lifestyle.
You got to breach that door head on and just tackle it together and say, "Hey, man, I'm struggling with these things. This is real for me. Can you help me? Can we get around this?" And you gotta be a breacher sometimes and just tackle those things.
Breach the door. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. That's what. Yeah, you can't. I don't know. You can't have those little sins and those things like sitting in the shadows. You have to talk through them and walk with your somebody together, side by side.
I like the breach analogy. So why don't you uh, why don't you explain a little bit what that looks like in the worlds we came from, for those watching that might not know what a breach is.
Yeah, that as it relates to what I'm picturing for the swim buddy model right now is, you have a problem, you have an issue, you have something behind that door, and maybe it's a habitual sin, maybe it's something you're struggling with, maybe it's I'm, secretly addicted to this or that, and that breacher, that's the number one guy who's going to knock down that door and face whatever's on the other side of that door head on. The number one guy typically takes a lot of that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good way to present it for the masses, but they take a lot of that adversarial force towards them first, and everybody else in that team stacked up falls behind you. So as a swim buddy, you tackle it together. You're a team. You flow together. You breach the door. You tackle whatever's on the other side of the door together, and that's how I'm picturing it. Is Troy, if you're struggling with something, I'm not going to just say, "Oh gosh, man, that sucks, dude." I guess I don't know. Go figure it out. Not that I think any friendship is that superficial, but especially as it relates to the swim buddy model, if you're struggling with something, I would hope that you would come forward to me and say, "Hey, man, like this is what I'm battling. I'm really feeling inadequate. I'm doing this or that," and we say, "Okay, well, we knock down that door together and we figure it out." And that's one buddy model is what I'm picturing is we breach that door and we tackle it together because it's hard to do it alone. I mean, you breach any door by yourself, it's a hard one man CQB situation. But if you got two or three, four guys, it's a lot easier. And so that's what I'm picturing for that swim buddy is somebody who's willing to enter that fatal funnel with you and tackle whatever you need to.
Yeah, no, I love the analogy, and
Yeah,
breaching that door looks different in different scenarios, and sometimes the front man he can kick the door in the right spot and get the door to fling open. Sometimes the door is unlocked, he can just open the door and walk in. Sometimes it takes a sledgehammer. Um,
or some
and then
ordinance.
in big scenarios, you have to throw an explosive slap charge on the door, and use some real force to get in there. So I guess I really love that analogy because you got to read your buddy and you have to
Yeah.
see how resistant is he going to be to making this change, and does he really want to get rid of this detrimental behavior in his life. And in
Yeah.
extreme scenarios, you got to throw that slap charge on the door, and you got to get aggressive with it. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way for us to equate it. I mean, obviously, anybody can take that metaphor or analogy and kind of piece it together, whatever background you come from. But I know for us, we have a lot of folks watching that are part of, entry teams, right? Whether it's, SWAT guys or some specialized teams out there and other team guys watching. But yeah, you have to tackle it, man. You have to tackle it. There's not a single person out there who, oh, maybe there is. Maybe I call them crazy, but who like to do those solo runs by themselves. Like you'd want a team with you. And I know, Troy, if you're in some trouble and we breach that door and you're the number one guy, you know where I'm gonna go. I know where you're gonna go. We're gonna feed off each other. We're gonna flow off each other. I'm gonna know you're gonna know your AOR. I'm gonna know my AOR, and we're gonna feed off each other, and we're gonna make this work as a swim buddy. And that's like kind of that level of intimacy it takes to be engaged with this spiritual swim buddy because you know when your guy's hurting, and it's important to step in at that time. That's the whole idea of the swim buddy, guys. Keep it simple. Breach that door together. Keep it simple. Keep it God based. Keep it faith based, and be real with each other.
On the lines of being real, I think one of the final points we had here, um, comes from Proverbs 17:17, and it says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." And that kind of sums up what we've been talking about. Like, it's not always going to be a great day. Like, it's not always just going to be awesome for both swim buddies, and so we are born for times of adversity, and we'll continue to love through those times, and we'll continue to implement the EAP throughout those times. And when I read, you know, this we're born for a time of adversity, and what does that look like? It kind of brought me to 3 points here, and it kind of goes to your point of just keeping it real, Tyler. It's like just have an intimate relationship. Be connected with your buddy to where when Tyler calls me and he's like, "Yeah," I'm like, "How you doing, Tyler?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing all right." You can immediately know we have this intimate relationship where I know, okay, Tyler's not doing great. He's not doing fine. He needs me to dive in a little bit and ask and get him to open up and start talking. So having that intimate relationship, being real with one another, uh, really opens up the relationship to grow quick and to really understand each other, like I
Yep.
said, inside and out.
Yep. Exactly.
So having an intimate relationship and then being intentional. So when you're being intentional, you're listening to what your buddy has going on in his life. You know milestones that he's going for. You know stuff his family's going through, and make sure you're intentional to follow up on those times. If you're praying about your buddy for something, make sure you're following up and asking how it went, or if he's making progress there, and just be intentional. So be intimate, be intentional, and then I think this last one is key, guys. Your relationship has to be indestructible. It doesn't matter what you guys face together. You can't leave your buddy. You have to be there for him, no matter what he says, no matter what he's going through. If he looks you in the eye and he says, "Hey, quit calling me. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like I'm done." Your
Yeah.
relationship can't be indestructible. You can't turn your back. You can't walk away.
That's right. I think that all of them are so important, but the indestructible piece, gosh, it's so easy in today's world just to try to sideline these relationships, and prioritize work or whatever else. But we have so many other things in the forefront versus like this swim buddy relationship. It's like rooted in God, and it's really easy in today's world where communications are endless, emails, phone calls, text messages, showing up to somebody's house, whatever. God, it's so easy to sideline these things and just say, like you said, like, hey, like, let's touch base next week or whatever, and which is fine. Like, give people space if they need it, of course, but you can't just give up on that. And I feel like that's a huge piece of it. I think I don't know, Troy. I don't know if you feel this way, but there's a lot of guys like I picture them like I will. They're going to be guys that I talk with, hang out with, whatever every week, right? And then all of a sudden, just life takes you in different directions, which is natural and fine. But you just hope that there's something grounded for those folks again, that they have somebody that's like their go-to in their corner who knows them. It's like, hey, yeah, I've known that guy for 15 years. I've known that guy for 20 years. Like, yeah, I know his wife. I know his kids. I know just generally, right, his struggles and those kind of things. And just having somebody like on the intimate, intentional, and indestructible level, I think is critical. It's mission critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of that's
Yeah.
kind of the down and dirty of the swim buddy model, guys. You
Yep.
know, that would be our challenge for you this week is go find that buddy if you haven't yet. Go find that buddy that is going to have that intimate, uh, intentional, and indestructible relationship. And then again, guys, going back to the EAP, just remember that as you go through your week, thinking about encourage, accountability, and thinking about protecting your buddy through prayer. That's really, Tyler, you and I have seen a great deal of success throughout this. Just using these very, it might seem so basic, it might seem so simple, guys, and really it is.
Yeah.
Because Tyler, I really loved your point of like what we're going for is keeping Jesus at the center of this, uh, and then just keeping it real. Like
Yeah.
we just keep it real with one another, and that's it.
That's it. Like I hope you guys, find that guy. We've been talking about it. Thank you. Another thank you is for all those everybody's been reaching out. text messages and phone calls. Really appreciate it. It's really nice to hear just feedback wise. Troy and I just not trying to explode this channel into 10 million people just based on views and this and that. But just really, really good feedback from folks that have been watching and reaching out, and really appreciate it. Just your feedback and yeah, growing this idea and these principles. So really appreciate it, guys.
We'll be praying for you guys this week, and we don't just say that. Anybody that's watching this video, I'm gonna pray for this. Gonna pray for the channel. Whoever might see this video,
Yeah,
we're covering you in prayer. And yeah, guys, just keep sharing, keep commenting, keep letting us know your thoughts. We'll keep the videos coming. So, love you guys. Men at War signing off.